Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest, after 30 years of struggling with being overweight, depressed, miserable in her job, and no hope for the future being any better, she found a life coach, and she found hope along with that. She discovered the goal of losing about 85 pounds, but weight loss was the least important. And she found a way around several obstacles and a better life. She learned to be calmer, happier, less stressed out human being. She found relationships improved. Her outlook on the future shifted, and one of those optimisms for the first time in decades. When she realized the incredible power that life coaching has to help people create positive change in their lives, she realized there was no better way for her to spend the rest of her time on planet Earth. Since then, she has devoted her life to learning skills that will help people change their lives for the better. Why don't we welcome to the show Natalie Fayeman, as she tells the story of how she first started on her path to her new life. So, Natalie, welcome to the show, and why don't you share with us that fantastic story that got you started on your new life and towards life coaching?
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. So my life has, I guess this is my midlife crisis that we're talking about, because the first 2/3 of my life was super high stress and not very enjoyable. I'm a veterinarian. I have been for like 32 years now. And that, as you can imagine, that was a lot of hard work to get there. And as soon as I entered the workforce, I immediately started questioning my career choice, because it was like super long hours. It was extremely exhausting, demoralizing. There's a huge amount of depression and career dissatisfaction and burnout, even a high suicide rate within the veterinary community. Mm-hmm. And, after working 24 years in the ER, some of my work weeks, I think the worst week I ever worked was like 92 hours, sleeping 2-3 hours a night and just constantly exhausted, dealing with angry people. There's a lot of reasons, but as the years went on and I started realizing that this is not the way I want to spend the rest of my life, ending every day frustrated, angry, resentful, miserable, depressed, no optimism for the future, nothing to look forward to. Is this really going to be the rest of my life? I kind of had a little bit of a midlife crisis. Like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I've never really been good at anything else. What am I going to do? And that whole time, as I got progressively more and more unhappy over all those years, I had developed a very common habit that a lot of people have, which was comforting myself with food. And so the unhappier I got, the heavier I got, and then the more unhappy I was, because then being heavy was just killing my self-esteem and just judging myself constantly, all the guilt and shame that goes along with that. So back in 2019, I had just kind of reached a point of, I would say, like my lowest point of depression and despair. had tried diet after diet, exercise program after program, and everything would work for a little while, but none of it was really sustainable. And I just kept ballooning and bouncing back and forth, which is such a common story. I mean, I think almost everybody has a story similar to that. But just totally by accident, I kind of stumbled across a weight loss group that was led by a life coach, and there were no lists of good foods and bad foods. There was no calorie limits that you had to stay within. There weren't any points. There was a completely different mindset, and it was all about learning to be in touch with your body, learning to trust and love and value yourself again so that you don't have to use food to make yourself feel better. Just it was 100% mindset, and there was absolutely no food that was off limits. You could eat cheesecake, you could eat pizza, but the rules were you had to actually pay attention to your body's hunger signals. You can eat whatever you want, but you can only eat when you're hungry, and you stop eating way before you're so stuffed that you have to unbutton your pants. Right. And I came to realize how much I had really depended on using food to manage my emotions, to make myself feel better, to comfort myself when I was lonely, to entertain myself when I was bored, when I was mad. Almost any kind of strong emotional reaction, I would go straight to food. And unlearning how to do that, coming up with better skills to be able to manage my emotions without having to turn to something to eat, that alone was life-changing. And as I went into this group with the idea that I'm here to lose weight, I started realizing that, hey, I'm becoming a happier person, a calmer person. I'm less stressed out. My family relationships are getting better. I have, for the first time in like 30 years, I have a sense of optimism when I think about my future and my ability to control the outcome of my life. And that kind of became my primary focus doing that work. And the weight loss really just kind of started taking care of itself because I was becoming a happier person who valued myself more and learning to trust and love myself again, which is something I had completely forgotten how to do for about 3 decades. Right. And, I tell people the weight loss was like an unintentional side effect of the self-development work that I was doing. And the benefits that I got from working with a life coach were so much more than weight loss. That completely changed my outlook on my life. And then when the pandemic rolled around and everything shut down and everything that had kept me so busy for the last 30 years just kind of evaporated, I kind of took the opportunity to find a coach training program that I thought was reputable and fairly comprehensive. And so I became a certified life coach, and then I went on to Positive Intelligence, which has been hands down the best thing I have ever done for myself. And so now I'm here just looking to pay it forward to as many people as would like to change their lives too. Wow. And that's how I got here.
Wow, that's one heck of a journey. I will admit one thing for myself. I am an emotional non-eater. Mm-hmm. If I start to feel bad or about the world or something like that, I just simply stop eating, which is the same as eating too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And not everybody manages their emotions with food. Some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to shopping online. Some people play games. Some people do drugs. There's any number of distractions. Food just happened to be mine.
Yeah, and and that's kind of the point is we got to discover the self-destructive behavior and replace it with the positive self-constructive behaviors, right? And I can see you said you did you were in an ER for animals, was it?
Yeah, emergency critical care medicine. That's what I did with my career for the first 24 years until I was so sleep deprived that I couldn't even keep my car in a straight line on the road anymore. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to die for this. So I transitioned to general practice. I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
And,
I can see how, because taking care, our furry friends are very important.
Absolutely.
And that's probably how you started down the path. It was you understanding that our furry friends are so important to us. They become our family members and everything. And I can see how people would not. It's like, I'm sorry, I had to put Fluffy down, and I'm sorry about this, but the injuries and everything were too greater for us to be able to fix, sort of thing, and people getting angry over that, and
Yeah,
yeah.
well, also people get angry not only because they're stressed out because something's going horribly wrong with their pet, but they are not always prepared for the financial impact of that. So they come into the ER, or even if it's a day clinic, they may not be able to afford the care that's necessary for their pet. And when they realize that, they are very sometimes very willing or anxious to shift that burden of responsibility off of themselves. So they will lash out at the veterinarian, trying to make it their fault for not caring enough to do all of this work for free or at a discount or whatever it is that they
Hmm.
want, or blaming the vet for the situation that they find themselves in with their pet. And
Yeah.
people can be kind of hard to deal with when
Yeah. Yeah,
they're
I
not
don't want
able
to
to
go
take
too far down that particular rabbit hole, but um, I was at one time. I had a household with three dogs and a cat, and I'm going to go a little step further and say it was three pit bulls and a very rambunctious
mm,
yeah, three pit bulls and a very rambunctious cat. Okay,
mhm,
well, one of the young, because they were still young pit bulls, came up with the parvo virus. I'm
mhm.
probably not exactly saying it correctly.
Corvo. Yep.
Yeah, and he went into renal failure,
Hmm.
and there was nothing to be done. And I remember, like, okay, the vet says there's nothing we can do about this at this point. Um, and having to, he was very kind and gentle about that part until he slid the bill across the table, and it was like a $3,000 bill, and I'm like, I'm trying to deal with grieving kids, and you want what from me?
Hopefully that didn't just come out of nowhere. Did they keep
It
you?
was the first time I met this vet.
Oh
He was
wow.
the vet up the street, and
Yeah. Well,
and
that can be a big shock. I
it,
can
well,
totally understand.
his kindness and his payment plan, he turned into the vet for the other dog, the other dogs and the cat. He took care of them for years because of his kindness and gentleness, as he did slide that bill across the table. And that, but I can't imagine the kind of stress he carried back home again. And
Yeah.
that was part of your story, was that stress that you carry back home,
Mm-hmm.
and not
Yeah, because you can't
and
save
not
it.
having the appropriate skills to deal with that stress, right?
Exactly, which is why I turned to eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a very destructive path. And like most self-sabotaging behaviors, you don't really appreciate the full scope of the damage that you're doing to yourself until it's way down the road, and then it starts to feel overwhelming and insurmountable and unfixable.
Right. Mm-hmm. So with that, how did was there something that you just looked up one day in the mirror and you decided enough is enough? How did that midlife crisis? Because you don't look old enough to even have a midlife crisis.
Oh, thank you. You're very sweet. I love you. I'm actually 55. I'll be 56 in June.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, I've discovered the secret to eternal youth. You want to know what it is?
Happiness?
That too, that helps a lot. But in my case, I've
I
discovered that if you just act as immature as possible, everybody thinks you're younger than what you really are.
Oh, I get that one too.
Yeah.
Where
So just act like
we
a kid.
Yeah. Uh, shall I say that 1966 or 1967 was a good couple years to be born?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I say that because hey, I was born in that same time frame myself.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
yeah.
you know what else? Zoom has this amazing feature called Touch Up My Appearance. I highly suggest it for all the ladies of a certain age.
I will say that to that with Zoom, you need to keep up with the updates on it.
Mm.
Because I don't have that feature, damn it.
Oh, it's out there.
so, so what are some of the most valuable things that you have learned from your life coach?
Oh my gosh. I would say, hands down, the most important thing that I learned and the thing that has changed my life more than anything else is how important it is to pay attention to the way you talk to yourself. Because we have, as human beings, most of us have somewhere around 60,000 thoughts a day, and over
Mm-hmm.
90% of them are negative. Self-judgment, judgment of ourselves, judgment of other people, judgment about the fairness or unfairness of whatever circumstances are happening to us. So we're constantly, even subconsciously, telling ourselves this negative, self-destructive narrative 24/7 for years, decades, for a whole lifetime. And that voice is so toxic and so destructive. It eats away at your self esteem. It sabotages your happiness, sabotages your enjoyment of your life. It poisons your relationships. It makes everything worse. When you can start to identify and intercept and start shifting that negative voice of judgment, self judgment, or whatever kind of judgment it is, you will start to see a profound change in every aspect of your life. My whole life has gotten so much better since I started paying attention to this and working on changing it. So I would say that is the single most important thing that I could pass along to your listeners.
Okay, so because I'm gonna say this, and you've already alluded to the fact that most of us don't even realize that we're doing it. Um, for me, I used to say to myself in the back of my brain, "Stupid, why did you do that?"
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that was stupid; it was stupid, which means I'm pointing to myself, calling me by that name or by
Mm-hmm.
that sense of being, right? So, what are some of the things that you would think or say to yourself that might be common to others?
Well, certainly before I started working on my self talk, before I was even aware of what life coaches were or what they did, the constant narrative in my head was I'm disgusting. I'm so fat, no one's ever going to love me. I'm a loser. I can't do anything. I always fail. Just over and over and over again, as if I had an abusive relationship with myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
was I was my own worst bully. Some people have we talk about this like the inner judge. Sometimes the inner judge is kind of sarcastic and condescending, and sometimes it is vicious and brutal and violent. And there's a whole spectrum of severity. For me, my judge was extremely sarcastic and very nasty, very insulting, very critical of absolutely everything. Anytime I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, anytime I made a stupid mistake, or, it could even be something simple like dropping something on the floor, all of a sudden I'm the world's biggest failure. And it's not any one thought in particular. It's the constant repetition, thousands and thousands of times a day, every day of your life for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And as you could imagine, you can't possibly hear such a negative voice speaking in your head all day, every day, without suffering the negative effects from it. And that was definitely the case with me. And that, it never really goes away entirely, but just by raising awareness and learning some techniques to start shifting that to a more positive, self-affirming voice, just the whole quality of my life has gotten exponentially better. And it's going to be a lifelong endeavor. it's going to be a work in progress for the rest of my life, but I've already seen huge results just from the last couple of years that I've been working on this.
What are some of the huge results aside from weight loss? We honestly
Oh, yeah.
we can see on the screen for those of you who are actually checking us the video out on our Rumble page. You can see how see that the weight loss part of Natalie's trip has been successful. But
Hmm.
what are some of the other things?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had the courage to put myself on a different career path when I started transitioning from veterinary medicine into life coaching.
Hmm.
That is not something I would have ever had the courage to do before because no one's going to take me seriously. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be good at this. I'm going to fail. It's going to be embarrassing. People are going to laugh at me. All these things were floating through my head all the time because I had zero confidence. And just the fact that I was able to recognize and shift that into more possibilities that gave me the courage to be able to pursue training as a life coach. I'm learning and maybe a lot of your female listeners can probably relate to this. I'm learning how to put my priorities at the top of my to-do list instead of putting everybody else's first,
Hmm.
and then going home every night exhausted and resentful and frustrated because nobody's reciprocating, nobody's taking care of me. And when is it going to be my time? When am I going to get to live my life the way I want to, instead of always doing and serving for everybody else? So, learning how to say no that's a new thing for me because that word was never allowed to be in my vocabulary before. So that has been probably the single greatest act of self-love that I've been able to give myself, is just to be able to say, I'm sorry, but I can't.
Right, right, right. I know for myself is like, no, this is self talk, by the way. No, you can't use that word. That's a horrible word. What,
Mm-hmm.
you can't say no to that. You have to say yes. You gotta jump on
Yeah.
there, and you gotta help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For my whole life, if I said no, that made me selfish. It was wrong. I wasn't allowed to say
right,
no, especially if it was to my boss. Um, and everybody else's wants and needs were always more important than mine. So no was just not a word that I was allowed to use.
yeah,
And even to this day, I have to remind myself that I don't have to feel guilty. So here's an example. If somebody comes to me and says, can you work for me so that I can have a day off? Um, the answer was always yes. And I would come to work angry because I gave up my day off, resentful, stomping around, snarling and snapping at people, being somebody that no one wanted to be around because I was just fuming because I had to say yes. And come to
mm,
realize that's not a service to anybody. If I say yes to somebody and then I'm angry at them about it and they don't even know why, that's no kind of way to treat people. So if I'm going to say yes with resentment, then that's not a yes. And if I say no, then I don't have to be angry and resentful at that other person. First of all, they didn't do anything to me. This was all the complex narrative and the lies that I'm telling myself in my head that make me feel like I have to say yes. I don't have to say yes. I can say no, and I can still have positive feelings towards that person, and to myself. And then they don't have to deal with my cranky ass. So that is saying no. It can be a good thing. It can be a good thing for me and for them.
yeah. People would rather deal with your happy behind than your cranky ass.
Absolutely. And it's not fair to other people. If I'm going to be snapping at people for something that's not even remotely their fault, then that's not that's not a gift to them at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally understand that. Um, do you remember the first time when you started working on yourself and you started discovering these things, right? Do you remember the first time you said no and how it felt?
Oh, it was horrible. I felt so bad. I was sweating bullets, like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a terrible person. They're going to be mad at me. And I can also remember how surprised I was when it wasn't a big deal. They were like, yeah, okay. And over time, as I start to practice this, the thing that I realized is that when people are used to your default answer always being yes, it does not occur to them that you're having these feelings of, oh, this is unfair, this is an inconvenience to me, or I'm going to pout and be angry and resentful because I had to give up my day off or whatever. They have no idea what's going on in my head. Until I start saying no, it doesn't occur to other people that I have needs and that I have limits and that I can only do so much in one day. And if my answer is always yes, I'm basically a doormat, and doormats get zero respect, right? When you start saying no once in a while, people start realizing, oh, okay, well, she has a limit, she has a boundary, she's taking care of herself. You'll actually notice that they become more respectful of your needs and your boundaries if you say no once in a while.
Very true. So, in your life coaching practice, because you've got all these wonderful certifications and everything, and you're a very kind and caring person.
Oh, thank you.
It may come from some of the years of cuddling our furry friends too. I am going to stick with some of that because, hey, I believe that veterinarians are angels in our society because they help us with our furry friends. But
For that.
with all that, what are the top 5 things that you want to teach people when you work with them?
Oh, well, definitely how to recognize that voice of self-judgment like we talked about before. That's a huge one. Learning that you are worth caring about, that you don't have to feel guilty for putting your needs first and for taking care of yourself so that you can take care of the people that you love. Rediscovering that sense of self-worth, because speaking strictly just for women in general, we are practically trained from birth to put everybody else in front of us, and it can be a really difficult there's a lot of burden of guilt if you dare to take care of yourself before you take care of what everybody wants from you. So a lot of women struggle with guilt and with not feeling worthy of putting the time and effort and energy into themselves that they give to everybody around them.
Right.
So the self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves, determines how we value ourselves and how much confidence we have, how much courage we have, how much we will put up with from other people being disrespectful of our needs and our boundaries, because not everybody out there is somebody that has good intentions. Some people are just out there to get whatever they can get from you, and as long as you keep giving and giving, they're going to keep taking and taking. And if you don't believe that you are worth putting a boundary around yourself to make sure that other people aren't taking advantage of you, then that's going to be a really difficult way to go through life. You're going to end up, like I did, very exhausted and burned out and frustrated and resentful. And as soon as the people have gotten from you what they want, then they just move on to the next one if you're not proactive about protecting yourself. And I'm not saying that that's everybody, but those people are out there. So learning to value yourself is really important, and just learning that you are worth taking care of. That's probably the most important thing that I would say. It takes courage sometimes to be able to work on yourself, to be able to put yourself first. And a lot of people around you aren't going to like it if they're used to getting what they want every time they come to you, and all of a sudden the answer is starting to become no. Sometimes they will escalate their efforts to make you feel guilty about it, or to manipulate you or to intimidate you or whatever method they have been using to get what they want, sometimes they're going to double down before they start realizing, okay, this isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
So it's it's a process.
Yeah. Oh, with that process, um, what is one of your favorite tools to teach people to help them, discover their new self?
Yeah, well, I have to say this is exactly what the positive intelligence program is all about. It's a 6 week program. For coaches, it's much more in depth and much more detailed. So I have gotten way more deep into it than what the average person would be able to, just so
Mm-hmm.
that I can then pass it on to other people. But this is exactly what we do. We first of all we work on identifying that self talk, that negative narrative that most of us carry around in our head, recognizing the ways that we behave that create the outcomes in life that are pretty much the opposite of what we actually want. Most people would probably agree that what we want in life is to be happy, to have as little stress as possible, to have the best possible relationships with our loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
to feel fulfilled in our career or whatever our life pursuit is. And what a lot of people, myself included, don't realize is that so many of our behaviors actually sabotage that actively and create the opposite outcome. So being able to recognize when our own behavior patterns are not bringing us closer to the kind of life that we actually want, and then learning how to quiet that negative self-talk, how to be able to hear the voice of the inner wisdom that's constantly being smothered by that tornado of chaos that goes on inside of our head all the time, and rediscovering that sense of empathy for ourselves, so that we are worth doing this work, that we can create the life that we have always wanted, the life that we were actually intended to have.
Right.
Empathy is something that we're so quick to give to other people, but we don't always give it to ourselves because we don't feel worthy, because we feel guilty, we feel like we don't deserve it, or we have to earn it first, which is completely hogwash. Um, yeah, and then just there are so many skills that we kind of forget over the years as we become grown ups and we start taking the weight of the world on our shoulders. The skill of self empathy is really the most important one, but also just rediscovering that creativity, that love of discovery, that ability to just take fearless action like we used to when we were kids, when we weren't worried about consequences and judgment and all the things that could go wrong and what are people going to say and all these things that really just kind of hold us back from doing the things that we really love and from being who we really are.
Yeah. You know what? You went back to that fountain of youth thing again. That's kind of funny. How you
It's
because
true. We come into this world as pure and perfect little
Mhm.
beings. We don't have bad habits. We don't have negative thoughts. We learn those things as we grow up and as things happen to us and people treat us in ways that they probably shouldn't. And we kind of start to learn that the world is not always a happy, friendly place. You have to kind of be paying attention for the predators and for things to go wrong, and
Mhm.
it's just that it slowly pulls us away from that carefree, happy, joyful, curious spirit that we're all born into this world with.
Yeah.
And so part of that journey is to be able to bring that full circle, to get back to that place, but to bring your adult wisdom with you, so that you are not this helpless, naive, innocent thing that's vulnerable to the human predators out there. You're able to see problems coming. You're able to protect yourself. You're able to hold those boundaries, but you still have that beautiful spirit within you. Then nobody can touch that. Nobody can damage that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So I gotta ask this question, and especially at this part of the interview, because the name of your practice is called No Limits Coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is that something that you believe that we as human beings we have no limits?
Well, we have physical limits that are. I mean, I can't flap my arms and fly around the house no matter how hard I try. Right? I do have limitations, but so many of the limits that hold us back from where we really want to be in our lives and who we really want to be as human beings are limits that we have placed on ourselves. And so breaking through those limits has truly changed the course of my life. And I do believe that it is within everyone's power to be able to change their lives for the better.
Hmm. So there it is. No limits coaching. There it is. The heart and
Not that
soul
there
of
aren't limits that are imposed on us just by being living creatures on this earth, but it's not necessary to impose limits on yourself.
right. Like you said, like it no matter how hard we flap our arms and try to fly like a bird, it won't
Mhm.
happen. But that doesn't mean we can't find a way around that obstacle.
Right, exactly. But here's another example. For so much of my life, I was limiting myself because I thought the only way that I could experience acceptance, respect from other people, love, connection was that I had to work my ass off and earn it. I had to prove that I was worth it. And that led me down the road of exhaustion and burnout and all the bad places that we already talked about. When in reality, love and acceptance, respect, connection, all those things, those are you're born with the right to be able to experience
Mm,
that just because of who you are. You don't
right,
have to work for it. You don't have to prove that you deserve it. You deserve it because you are a living, breathing person with a good heart.
right.
And that
Uh,
took me 55 years to learn.
yeah. Mm. I get that you tapped into something that I say to a lot of people. It took me over 50 years to become what you see in front of you,
Yeah.
of training and things and learnings and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, you, I like a lot of what you say about the hard work part. It isn't it isn't necessarily doing hard work. It's what we're working hard on,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah. And how many times did I agree to give up my vacation or my day off or stay an extra 4 hours past the end of my shift because I thought that's what I had to do in order to be respected and valued by my coworkers, by my boss. How many times did I put aside plans that I was looking forward to so that I could run off and take care of someone else who
mm,
needed me to help them move or whatever it was?
mm-hmm,
Always constantly putting everybody's needs in front of mine because that's what I thought I had to do to be accepted, to be liked, to be cared for. Every relationship I had ever been in up until that point, I basically turned into my boyfriend's waitress, taking care of every need, doing everything for them because I was trying to earn the love that I didn't have to earn, that should have been given freely to me because of my personal qualities, not because of what I could do for them.
right. With your positive mindset and your system of coaching, how have your personal relationships changed?
All my personal relationships have got so much better, and a big part of that is realizing that I had been putting so much expectation on other people,
Uh,
to do, to behave the way I think they should behave and to do the things that I think that they should do. And that's not really fair of me, that, to expect someone else to conform to my rule book when they don't even know what my rules are.
mm-hmm,
Um, it's not fair of someone else to put that responsibility on them, just the same way that I would want someone to let me be who I am with no expectations. I need to give that same thing to other people and not get angry if, for example, somebody doesn't connect with me on an emotional level the same way that I want to connect with them, because their brain just doesn't work that way. If somebody doesn't, for example, if I'm dating someone and I want to go to jiu-jitsu class and they don't want to do that, they want to go walk on the beach. It's not like you don't care about me if you don't come do the thing that I want to do, and it's just all these infantile arguments that used to come out of my mouth, because I'm trying to get them to do what I want them to do instead of letting them be who they are, letting them do what they want to do, and loving them for it anyway.
Yeah. By the way, jiu-jitsu is pretty fun.
Not good for your romantic life, by the way, I have to say. Yeah. I learned the hard way not to bring up martial arts on the first date. Why not? It kind of scares guys away.
Well, we can go down a rabbit hole of how our society tries to place gender limitations, and but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole in this conversation. We'll come back for another conversation on that one.
So I made the mistake. Here's another mistake. Yeah. I'm an avid kayaker. Love kayaking. Many years. I made the mistake of taking a gentleman who was, at the time, I think maybe 15 years younger than me. Took him out kayaking for a first date. Ended up having to tow him home because his arms crapped out on him, and never saw him again because apparently that was terminally embarrassing to his ego. So, that's something else I wouldn't recommend doing on a first date.
Terminally embarrassing to his ego. I'd say it's terminally embarrassing to what was stuffed between the exactly. 4.5 inches in his brain. But
exactly.
That I'm sure that was a pretty fun story. Kayaking, that's right. You live on the opposite ocean that I do.
I live on the east coast of Florida, so I got the Atlantic right there in my backyard. Yeah. Not literally, within a few minutes.
I can walk down the street and find and stick my feet in the Pacific Ocean. So, yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of the ultimate goals that when somebody works with you? What are some of the ultimate goals they can expect to see pop up in their life?
Well, I think everybody comes to coaching with a different idea of what they want, but what almost always ends up happening is that those goals evolve during the course of coaching as people start to gain deeper insight as to what's really going on beneath the surface. Again, going back to the example of weight loss, I thought my problem was I was just eating too much. My real problem was a self-esteem problem. And once I started to address that, the weight loss problem took care of itself. So the problem that we end up working on as we move through the program is almost always a little bit different and a little bit deeper than the problem they came to the program with. Mm-hmm. And the voyage of self-discovery, it's something that's constantly evolving, and it's not the same for any two people, but self-esteem, self-worth issues I find are really common, especially with women. It's just not always originating from the same place.
Okay. Very cool. Well, with that being said, best ways to find No Limits Coaching.
Yeah, my website is nolimitscoachingnow.com. And if people would like to learn a little bit more about what I do, they can actually get a free video that is a little bit more comprehensive about the ways that we sabotage ourselves and the way we cause our own stress through our own behaviors without even really realizing it. So you can go to nolimitscoachingnow.com/stress and just enter your name and email and get a really helpful video that will probably bring you some unexpected insights and give you a better idea about what I do for a living.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm sure what you do for a living is you help many people achieve a better life, right?
That is my goal. That is what I got from my first coach, and I feel like it's my moral obligation to pay that forward to as many people as possible.
Yeah. So, anyway, thank you everybody for listening today, and it's been a blast speaking with you, Natalie, and you're really fun. Um,
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great being on your show, and I hope your listeners find some value in it.
yeah. So, go to nolimitsnow.com.
No limits coaching now.com
Oh, sorry.
slash stress.
Yes. And get the free video and work with Natalie, and you're going to have a lot of fun with her. She's a great person. Anyway, with that being said, find that subscribe button wherever it is, and you can get download more podcasts of ours where you get to hear more inspirational people like Natalie tell us, hey, we can do it, and we can be inspired.
And it doesn't have to be hard.
And it doesn't have to be hard. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everybody, for listening again.
Thank you so much, Michael.
So I wish upon that shooting star, and
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.